Friends, hello. If you are planning to travel in 2024, I probably don't have the best news for you today, but it's also quite logical. All of this is connected to the war in the Middle East. Most likely, in 2024 prices for Egypt will rise significantly. And here is fresh news from the night of March 10th from the Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources. There has been a very serious increase in fuel prices. Moreover, the increase was substantial, almost 30%. Prices were raised for everything: gasoline 92, gasoline 95, and also compressed natural gas for cars. This is exactly the gas that most taxi drivers use in Sharm el-Sheikh, in Hurghada, and of course also many minibuses. So, if a cubic meter of compressed gas used to cost £10, starting from March 10th it now costs 13 Egyptian pounds. Meanwhile, gasoline 95 used to cost £21 and now it costs £24. Naturally, this will lead to higher prices for taxis and minibuses. But it should be noted that fuel prices were increased not so long ago. It happened at the end of 2025 and also earlier in April 2025. And now once again, and I'll tell you this morning I was traveling from Hurghada to Delta Sharm, and instead of the usual £10, the minibus driver already demanded £15. So I think that soon we will forget about the minimum ride price of £5. Possibly it will be £10 or £7, because, as usual, nobody gives change in small £1 banknotes. So naturally we expect prices for minibuses to rise, but of course we are not talking only about public transport. If it were only about that, it would be nothing serious. We are talking about a global increase in prices. Your vacation may become more expensive already in the coming weeks, and if you are thinking about buying a tour right now, this may actually be a good time. If prices in your city have not already skyrocketed, the reason for the price increase is a combination of factors. It's not just seasonal demand and not only the rise in fuel prices. It's not even just the reorientation of tourists from Dubai to other destinations. By the way, do you think Egypt is interesting for residents of Dubai? Would they choose to move their vacations to Sharm el-Sheikh or Hurghada? In reality, the situation is much more serious. The ongoing war in the Middle East is already triggering a chain reaction whose consequences will be felt by every tourist, even if you fly to the most peaceful countries. Many people think the problem only concerns the conflict zones, but that is a serious misconception. The real impact will come from two key fronts that directly influence the cost of travel: aviation fuel prices and the redistribution of tourist flows. Let's start with the first and most obvious factor of fuel for airplanes. Airlines use jet fuel, and its price has already made a sharp jump. In Europe, fuel prices have nearly doubled in just a few days, from about $830 per ton to around $1,500 per ton. Just think about that. And everything here is simple. Airlines are not charitable organizations. Any increase in their costs will naturally be passed on to consumers, that is, to passengers. Airline tickets will become significantly more expensive. That is how experts explain it. Even if the shortage of fuel increases demand for oil, it directly affects the cost of flights. Any charter flight, any regular flight will become more expensive, and this concerns not only certain routes. Another factor is the behavior of tourists themselves. Many travelers, frightened by the headlines in the news, begin to change their travel plans massively. They avoid not only conflict zones, but the entire region that is perceived as unsafe. This demand instantly flows into the usual safe harbors, Turkey and Egypt, but even here there are many questions. Many tourists, judging by the comments under my videos, are still afraid to fly to Egypt because of the war in neighboring countries. But what happens when demand still grows massively while the number of hotel rooms and flights remains limited? That's right, prices go up. It's a classic formula. Fewer available places plus more people wanting them means vacations become more expensive. There is another factor: the cost of longer routes and logistics. The longer and more complicated the route, the more fuel is consumed. And fuel is now more expensive. Airlines will naturally pass these costs on to passengers, as I already mentioned, even if your flight technically does not pass over conflict zones. Its cost may increase simply because global logistics have become more expensive. This means that even familiar destinations like Antalya or Hurghada may suddenly become more expensive, but flight prices are only the tip of the iceberg. Transfers, excursions, food, and tour packages at the destination will also feel the effect of rising costs. For tourists from the CIS countries, this is especially important. These popular destinations are geographically close to unstable regions. And if Europeans begin to massively change their travel routes, the flow of our tourists shifts even more strongly toward Turkey and Egypt, despite the fact that many still have doubts. Experts also note another interesting effect. When international travel becomes more expensive and psychologically stressful, some tourists switch to domestic tourism. Yes, exactly. This creates additional price pressure on resorts within their own countries. For example, in Russia. So there is a paradox. Events somewhere far away in Iran or the Persian Gulf can even affect the cost of a trip to Sochi or other popular domestic destinations in Russia or in your own country. Key destinations are under pressure not only because of demand but also because of general instability in fuel prices, which affects the cost of aviation and the transportation of tourists. The rise in fuel prices directly affects the cost of almost all goods and services because fuel is a basic resource for the economy. So this news from March 10th will certainly not go unnoticed, and its consequences already began to be felt this morning. Everything that is produced, transported, or delivered requires energy. Roads, trucks, trains, airplanes, fishing, and delivering products to stores, all of it depends on fuel. Therefore, when fuel prices increase, manufacturers and transport companies face higher costs, which they are naturally forced to pass on to the final consumer. In addition, rising fuel prices also affect the service sector. Taxis, food delivery, tourist trips, logistics for stores and restaurants, all of these involve fuel consumption. When energy costs increase, companies are forced to adjust their prices. Otherwise, the business becomes unprofitable. As a result, rising oil or fuel prices create a chain reaction that affects a wide range of goods and services, making life more expensive. Travel may gradually become something mainly for the middle class or perhaps even only for the wealthy. Will the hotels you used to stay in still be affordable for you? Or will prices rise so much that you will have to look for something simpler? Or maybe the price increase has already reached your region and the vacation you planned has suddenly become more expensive. These are the questions that many tourists are asking now. Global events and rising fuel prices are literally changing the rules of the travel market. It is important to note that on March 9, Donald Trump said that the war in the Middle East may end soon. We would very much like to hope that this is true. If you are planning a vacation this summer, it is important to understand that ticket and tour prices may rise suddenly, even if the destination remains calm and familiar. Another important point, the Egyptian pound has weakened sharply against the US dollar and other currencies, including the euro. If just 2 weeks ago $1 cost about 47.5 Egyptian pounds, sometimes 47.60 or 47.70, then within a week the rate jumped to about 50 pounds per dollar. Today, as I am recording this on March 10th, the rate is around 51.70 pounds for $1, slightly lower than the peak. The euro, in turn, already costs more than 60 pounds, and I'll tell you an interesting story. In Egypt, exchange rates can change at the most unexpected times. For example, a friend of mine was standing in line at the bank to exchange money at a rate of 50 pounds per dollar, and literally the next person in line exchanged money already at 51.70. So you shouldn't expect currency rates to change at some logical fixed time like noon or 1 p.m. It might happen at 8:20, 7:15, or any random moment. You can always check the current exchange rate of the dollar or euro against the Egyptian pound on the website nb.eg. There is a section called Foreign Currency where you can see the current exchange rates for the dollar, euro, and pound. Friends, I hope that in the future we will have as many good news stories as possible. For my part, I will continue monitoring the news and, of course, promptly inform you about all important developments happening in Egypt and in the tourism industry in general. That's all for now. Victor was with you, the channel Walk Like a Traveler. As always, subscribe to my channel and leave a comment under this video. It helps promote the video and motivates me to continue filming, editing, and producing new content.